the taping. So welcome, fellas. This should be fun tonight. DC's got his update on things that he's been doing. I was talking to Tim earlier, and there's so much he's accomplished since we've talked last. It was tough to narrow it down, but he's targeted a couple of things, which I think should be very cool. And I've got something for you guys. It'll probably be next time. I wasn't able to put this together, but I've been working on scratch building a harp stand for the three-way turnout, and it's done. So that'll be for next time. So without any further ado, Mr. Cebula, take
Okay,
us on a ride.
let me get up here and hear that. Okay, gonna do an update. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Basically, I've uh-oh, what's going on here? Give me a minute here. Let me try this again. Let's try this one then. Come on, computer, there you go. Okay. Okay, basically there's I broke it down into two sections tonight. The first one, I'm going to give you a quick overview of how things stand, and next then I'm going to focus on the construction / installation of turnouts, switch machines, and throw rods for my Delaware Central. Okay. One of the things that I had to do is to correct the spacing on the micro scale track. And basically what you see here is I've got a piece of old real estate sign, plastic cut so it fits right between the rails. And then this white thing up here, if you can see it, is the spacer. And I actually have three of them. I'll place it between the rails, put a little drop of super glue and slide it down. The super glue isn't meant to permanently hold the rails or the ties in one position on the rails, but it holds them close enough so I can mess with the track without it popping off. So that was one thing that took a bit. I built 42 fast tracks turnouts. The one you see here is the duplicate double one I made. It's most complicated. Because you have turnouts, I needed switch machines, and I will go into details on this. The ones I used were fast tracks, bullfrog switch machines that I built. Another thing that I did, I recommend you should never be afraid to change your initial decisions if they prove to be less than satisfactory. This is where my canal is going to be. And originally where the top is here, you can see on the left and the right was level with the pieces on either side. And the canal just set too far down. So I raised everything up 2 inches. That was one of my projects. Also built and installed this this viaduct. Started as a Cabri kit, and after many attempts, despite all the stuff I have on hand, I didn't have the matching stonework. Because what I've done is I've raised it, I built buttresses, I built extensions on either end. I redid the entire side up here and built the walls up here and the capstones. So that's installed now. Another thing that I did, this was for my crow car and foundry. I built this ash pit, scratch built and painted it, and also did an inspection pit. The foundry is going to have its own dedicated engine, a little 424 I have. And I'm going to try, I figured if Don Ball is able to do it with, eventually I should be able to get it to run on DCC. So that's that. I had gotten up here on the top, if everybody can see it, BK Enterprises Crossing. On the left of your screen will be my Crow Car and Foundry, and on the right, it does track leading to the linen mill. To get a frog juicer was going to be like 80 some dollars. So instead, I picked up 5 of these 5-amp double pole, double throw, center off, auto centering switches. I think I got these on Amazon. And it's kind of cool because as a train, if you can imagine a train coming in from the right-hand side of your screen to go over the crossing, it's heading towards Crow Car and Foundry. And I don't know if you can see it, but this is not the fascia, but it's the joist on which the everything's mounted right now. There's CC and F, and there's a little arrow. Basically, what you do is I really like the idea because my layout especially is not as large as Charlie's or Tom's, so that there's more operator involvement in what's going on. So to power the frogs, if the train's going into Crow Car and Foundry or out of Crow Car and Foundry, you take your finger, put it on that switch and push it in this direction. Once the engine crosses the crossing, you release it and the switch automatically goes into the center position. The train's coming out of there, you throw it the same way. Now, if you have a train going into the linen mill, then you throw the switch to your right as it's crossing the crossing. And when you release it, it goes to the center position again. And that will, that way it ensures that I don't, or haven't actually left it in the center position. And I'm sorry, in one of the positions, and I'm not getting a short. Let's see. All the track has been installed. I still have a turntable to install. I have a Al truss bridge to build and install. And there's some details going on, but I've tested the track for make sure all the electrical's going well and the reliable. One of the things I had to do, the original rail joiners that I used were Atlas, but it turns out they were like a code 80 rail joiner. So my code 55 rail, there was too much play where the rails were connecting. So I replaced all those original rail joiners with actually code 55 rail joiners, and it's helped with the smoother operation. I found in a couple places I needed to adjust track gauge. And what I've done is over the years, I collected a number of code 55 track gauges. And some are by Chemtron, some by precision scale, micro scale, and I know there was at least one other company in there. They're basically all the same thing. So I kind of put them on the track, and then I would do is I'd heat them with this hair dryer. Now I have a hot air gun. So I was concerned that in my enthusiasm, we'll say that I would melt the styrofoam. Did not have that problem with the hair dryer, but I did put it on high. I'd heat the rail. It softened the plastic up just enough that allowed the rail to kind of slip. And as I let it cool, the track gauges were still on there, and it's for the most part everything was held in gauge when they cooled because the ties were plastic here. Now, there were a couple spots where that didn't happen. Over on the right here, this is the Susquehanna Viaduct that I built. And this particular curve is going to be inside a tunnel. What I was getting was as trains are going through, the pilots on the trucks when it was going, heading from left to right, would rise up over the wall here, and I'd get derailments. Also with I have a couple of the Mantua passenger cars, and their steps are actually wider than in the other passenger cars. Actually, passenger cars were longer than the Mantua cars, but the Mantua cars were catching there. So what I've done is I took out all the plastic ties, and then these are all PC board ties. I used those gauges, make sure everything was engaged, and I soldered the rail to the PC board ties, so everything's engaged going around the corner. You can see here the lines. Can you see them through the ties?
Yes,
That is so you don't get shorts between one rail and another.
right.
And then using a Fast Tracks rail bending jig, I took some code 55 rail and I bent it so it's basically the same curve. I don't have pictures of all there were a lot of pins involved in getting it to stay in place that it was supposed to be, but I soldered it together. I have trains going through there with no problems whatsoever. Over here, I had ballasted everything up to this point. I chipped the ballast away. And what I've actually done is the rail here is slightly curved as it goes into the viaduct. And I had no problems. You'll notice right here, if you can see this, that's the effect of the soldering iron. But I figured that if my trains were hitting it, probably a real train would have, and it just took out a chunk of that stone.
Huh.
So I just dressed it up a little bit, and that's what it looks like. Now, it's this from about here on in looks kind of messy, but it's all going to be in a tunnel. My idea is to get reliable electrical and everything running reliably. And that's the cosmetics were not as important in this situation. On the other side, again, in another tunnel, this is, I kept having where you can see the ties missing here. The first tie I cut and removed section of was right in here. And then all of a sudden that trains were going pretty good through there, but I was getting some problems with the gauge and trains derailing going through that, what'll be a tunnel. So this is a guardrail that I made out of, I believe it was 0.04 by 0.06 evergreen styrene. Again, ran it through that Fast Tracks rail bending jig. Then I glued on, I don't remember the size, but these are actually other pieces of evergreen styrene. When it was done, everything was held in place. And then I used plastic bonding to glue them to the ties. And the next day I actually hit them with super glue. I have no problems with trains running in and out of this curve anymore. It's in the tunnel, so I'm not as concerned about cosmetics. I'm concerned again with reliability.
Right.
Okay. I had one return loop that everything had been working fine, and all of a sudden it developed a short, and train would go in there, work fine, but it would dead short coming out the other side. I traced the wires to make sure nothing was wired improperly. I contacted the manufacturer about the automatic, say ARSC automatic reverser that I was using. I actually have two return loops, so I was switched them out. Still had the same problem, so the automatic reversers were functioning properly. The wiring all looked good. I ended up tearing out a section of track, rebuilding a new turnout and putting it in. We had the same problem. I was pulling my hair out. Went to retrace it once again, and lo and behold, this little switch machine here was wired into this bus wire. You'll notice that I have some electrical tape here and here where I pulled off the suitcase connectors.
Right.
These two bus wires run to one electrical section, one electrical block on the layout, and these wires run to a different electrical block. So I had wired this machine into the electrical block that was going into the reversing loop, whereas it should have been wired into these wires. I mean, I don't know how many times I looked at that before I finally figured it out. Disconnected it, wired it properly. It's running fine. Some of the other stuff I've done, I've still not quite finished. I scratch built this trestle work to kind of represent that at City Point. I still have to put on the cross bracing, the nut bolt and washer castings. I also built a wall wooden culvert, because what you have back here, it's hard to tell in this image, is going to be fill. And another thing I worked on was this was a cast resin retaining wall I got from, I don't know where I cut it, and I put a piece of a 1/4 inch dowel in here to make the retaining wall there. So that's another thing I've been working on.
Nice.
My engine house, I don't know, must be a decade old. And it had suffered in, was not part of the layout, but it had suffered. I had lost 5 of the 6 doors on the unit. I discovered in the middle of one summer that condensation on the AC had dripped down, and you can't see it here. The other side of the roof is stained.
Oh, geez.
Mike Willigal actually posted a picture of the rear of the engine house before this was just solid. And so I put in the windows corresponding to those of the City Point engine house. Some of the interior bracing had broken. I've run powered all 3 tracks inside. And then the rail that I used for the engine house was actually code 70. I thought it was code 55 when I installed it. It was code 70, so I had to do and it's an entire another session presentation, but I had to make a transition rail. Again, you can look at those things on YouTube. But the most important thing that I've accomplished was trains are running and reasonably reliable on the Delaware Central. And that's the big thing. Now, I wanted to focus on, well, as a matter of fact, I've had several operating sessions. First one was with my grandkids. It's my granddaughter, Lily. And she seemed to really enjoy running the trains. And I was just, I know Tom, when you go up there and have operating sessions on his layout, Tom is just kind of like there to troubleshoot and help us and kind of just oversee it. I can really understand the pleasure he gets out of that now, is having someone else run on your layout and see the, the joy they're getting out of it. It's really great. They're both, we actually ended up having 3 trains running. We had a stock train, we had a U.S. military railroad train, and we had a passenger train running. Even my son got down there looking at how the turnouts work. One of the other things I've done, I brought down some structures that I've worked on. Some are complete. Some that need repair and some are never quite finished over the years. Just kind of placing around the layout. I did have just a few weeks ago, Tom was down and we kind of had an op slash work session. Tom was really into working, got all the ties primed. He got a lot of ties primed. At this point, all the ties that you can see are primed. I did not bother finding ties that were hidden in tunnels or behind the mountain or anything. So you can see like the ties here are all spaced going through here, but there'll be a tunnel portal right in here somewhere. So none of this, this is just straight out flex strand. Also had my step grandson here operating session, but I only have a video of him. He doesn't stand still quite as much as the other two did. Let's see. I'm going to focus on train installation though. The turnout installation. Am I going too fast?
No,
Oh,
I,
okay.
for me anyway.
Okay. Okay, in this slide, what I did before I glued track in, I had laid the track down. I had built all the turnouts ahead of time. I laid all the track down. They were held in place with these T-pins. And then I also, wherever there was a straight track, if you can see this along here, this straight line, that is where the rail for the track that's going to go in there is going to be, one of the rails is going to be centered over there. The two black lines are roughly to help me so that when I put down the Loctite PL300 that I use as the adhesive, so I kind of keep it where it's supposed to be. I also cut out, which I'll show you in a minute, some 1/8" plywood to use underneath my turnouts. Since I was told that there's some issues that you were having with the turnouts. What I would do is I'd lay them down where the turnout was supposed to be. And this edge right here would be the last tie in the turnout. And then I would, around them, I would cut with a box knife. And then this, I would do, this is a Bosch 1/16 by 6" drill bit. This just happens to be a 4-pound weight that I got from my dad, and it happens to have a nice 90-degree angle in there. Help me keep the drill straight as I'm drilling. I know it doesn't look like it's straight here, but it's hard to keep it straight with one hand and try to photograph it with the other. So I would drill down manually with my pin vise till I hit the plywood decking. Then I'd go back and I would do the same thing, but this time I have another, this is the same bit, but it's a different, same size bit, a different bit, and drill through the plywood. Then I would go underneath the layout and I would drill up from the bottom through, and I drilled oversized holes. I think they're a 1/2" or 5/8 of an inch in diameter. Originally, this will be where a throat rod's going and another throat rod will be going in this area. Originally, I was going to solder the wires that go to my frogs. I was going to solder it underneath the frogs, and I just ended up not doing that. But that's why you see those holes, 2 holes there. I ended up using them. There's another way I ended up soldering those. So I go back, the Dremel tool is set. I had a piece of plate glass. I take a piece of the plywood and you can set it so that the depth of the Dremel tool is the same as the depth of the plywood. So it doesn't overcut the hole too deep.
Right.
And I go around as carefully as I could around the outside of what the piece I'm going to take out. Then I would go back And this plywood is the same thickness as this plywood.
Right.
And just go back and forth and back and forth. This, the outside one was done with a 1/8 inch bit. The biggest bit I could find is a 1/4 inch router bit for the Dremel tool. And so you do a section, you'd go maybe 3/4 of an inch, and then you'd have to kind of clean it out and vacuum up and go another 3/4 of an inch. Go and clean it up and take it out. But the depth is pretty good. If you have a real big screen, you might be able to see, but there's some little tiny ridges here. So after I got it entirely routed out, I would go back and I just kind of knock down those ridges using a sanding block.
Wow.
The plywood was held in place with, again, with the Loctite PL300. I would just run it back and forth, trying to keep it, just a little bit away from here. And then I'd try to get it as even as possible with a 1-inch putty knife. After that, I just hammered it in. And this is actually a 7-pound weight. I actually weighted them down overnight. Okay. Again, the idea is to try to keep the plywood level with the top of the styrofoam. The next step was I went back with the sander. Okay. And some of them I could use the big sander. In other locations, I had to use my little palm sander. And as you see here, sometimes I even use different size sanding block. Okay. After everything was in and I felt pretty good about it, I'd go back and the straight lines I was talking about, I'd run them, as you can see here, across. So I know that when I go to install the turnout, I know two things. The last tie on that turnout is going to be flush with this edge here. If you look down here at the bottom, you see this line going across here?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's a little, you might not be able to see it, but there's little lines here. Basically, that's the outline of the last tie that's going in for this turnout. And that would correspond to the edge of the piece of plywood right here. So I knew where this end was, and I knew that my straight piece on that turnout, a straight rail on that turnout, needed to go right above there. Okay. I did not use the adhesive to glue in the turnouts. Instead, I used crack nails. More about that a little bit later. Next thing I did, once I had the turnout just dry laid on top and held in place, I took an X-Acto knife with a number 11 blade on either side of the throw rail, or throw tie, I'd cut a little strip. You can see them down here. You see those two lines with the green cursors? Okay.
Yep.
Then I'd go back. This drill bit is slightly smaller than the distance between those two lines. I drilled a series of holes because these lines ended where the ties were. Where the outside rails were. So ended up with this nice little slot. Now keep in mind that underneath this slot is a bigger hole. Okay. I would go in and clean out this slot. I have some ignition files. I also used them. I also used, I have somewhere I got a broken wood file. It's a shorty one that would fit in there. And also just use a cheap emery boards. Okay, just to kind of file the sides, and make sure they're nice and smooth. And so the throw rod, this will be exactly underneath that throw tie. Okay. The throw rods are actually going to come up right in the center of that hole. Okay. These are examples of the Bullfrog switch machines that I built using the fast tracks. Over here, you can see have a friend who was one of the original users of it. Actually, Ray Russell. His wife was the one who was doing the shirts and hats for us. And he's kind of an electrical whiz. And he also was one of the initial people to use fast tracks. And he suggested this is just a piece of 1/4 inch angle K&S that I got through either Amazon or eBay. And epoxied there, and it just adds a certain rigidity to the machine. And because Ray was saying sometimes you got some problems with some of the wood, even though it's plywood, snapping. These are the switches that are used, and this is the throw rod, of course, and this is the mechanism that goes through there. There is a spring that holds this ball bearing in place. So as this is pulled this way by the throw rod mechanism, it slides over and it locks into this position. So you can go from lock position to lock position. This piece here, there's a little switch here on the side of this switch. And as this goes in and out, it actually throws that switch and changes the polarity
Polarity.
of the frog.
Who makes these, DC?
I'm sorry?
Who makes these?
These I got through Fast Tracks, and they come as kits that you have to assemble. But they're not hard. I mean, Tom and I did it once, and I only had to fix one of them for putting it together wrong. And I built 40 some. They're actually, once you get into it, it's kind of becomes kind of a, you know, you just do it. You don't really think about it. The only thing is you can build the machine so this is on this side of the machine, or so it's on the other side of the machine. They call them the right hand and left hand. And I built too many this style and not enough of the other style. As you can say, this hole here is this one, and there's a hole there for that one. He suggests you do about a 50-50 of them, because there's times when you can only use one machine won't work, and you want to make sure that this hole here is on the right side for what you need it to do. Which
DC,
is why
did you use candle wax on the ball bearings so they slide?
not on the ball bearings, but on this piece here behind here, I used actually used beeswax.
I used candle wax, but I put it
Yes.
on that ball where the ball slides back and forth. They seem to work better.
I've had no problem with the beeswax. Mine's
Yeah, I
beeswax
had
is beeswax is harder than candle wax. And I happen to get some as I get so much stuff. Donna's mom passed away, and as we were cleaning out the stuff and stuff was going to be thrown away, the beeswax got thrown my way. You know, so they work pretty good. You know, I have not had problems with them. Okay, this is a machine, after installing machines, getting about probably over half of them installed. I realized that if I put on carpet tape, I could cut out a piece of carpet tape, cut out a little V slot here, stick it on there, then trim off the outside, trim out the holes. These are the mounting holes for the screws. And I could slide the machine up, and it kind of temporarily held it underneath the layout, and I could do adjustments until I get exactly centered underneath that turnout I needed centered under. And then I could drill the holes and run the screws for the to actually mount it. So I mean, it's just a temporary situation. It does pretty good holding them though. Okay. What's going on here? I want the next slide. Why am I frozen up? Okay, there's me installing it underneath. I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to get mounted through the holes, but actually was much easier than I anticipated. The trick is that you need to get the two rails on your machine centered between these two outside rails so that the hole that is completely centered within that turnout. You run this up straight, this rod here. Throw rod will run straight up through that hole that you drilled in the center of the tie. And it works great. Okay, and this is kind of that mess you were looking at. This is kind of what it looks like now. What I ended up doing, I don't know if you can see on your screens, but over here on this rail here,
Where are you? Oh, I see.
the feed wire to the frog actually comes up there. The aisle is going to be down here towards the bottom of your screen. The feed wire comes up, and I ended up, it was just easier rather. I just soldered the feed wires onto that rail because the whole frog is all soldered together as one unit. All you have to do is solder one rail and everything's electrified properly. These are the other wires. Now what I've done is every rail on the layout has a feed wire running to it from it down to the bus line. Okay. Here, these ties are actually been primed. They haven't finished painting, but they're primed now. One of the other things, if you're looking, this is I discovered, hindsight's a lot easier than as you're doing it. But I tested before I installed any turnouts to make sure everything was gapped properly. There were no shorts anywhere. And then I began installing them, and I was using track spikes to hold down the rails, and I was getting shorts. So I went back and I redid all the gaps in a number of them to make sure they were all done. I made sure this was before I even had feed wires to the rails. I thought, well, gee, maybe the electricity, or maybe I need to let the glue down. Maybe the current's going through the PL 300. After a couple of days, I was still running into the same problem. It turns out that with the plywood I use, if I put a spike in here, and I put a spike in anywhere else in here, and I run my volt ohm tester in here, between here, I've got a short. So if I have this rail spike and this rail spike, effectively I'd have a short between those two rails. So what I've ended up doing is just spiking down one rail, and then I'm going to rely on the, when I put in the ballast, to hold the rest in place. However, what I found is that these seem to be down pretty well, and I haven't noticed any movement in them. Okay. If I had to redo it again, wherever I use the plywood, I would put in cork. Okay. And I wouldn't have to, that's what I would do. I'm sorry?
Spikes were causing the short?
The spikes going into the plywood. If I only have the spikes on one rail, there's no problem. It's when I have them in opposite rails, it's effectively connecting the two rails and run up with short. So, okay, now my throw rod controls. Basically, the throw rods, I got mine through Fast Tracks. You can buy them in 18-inch or 36-inch lengths. I got mine in 36-inch lengths because you can cut them pretty easily. They consist of an outer tube, which you can see here in the red, and an inner tube that slides through the outer tube And this control knob is just screwed into the end of the yellow tubing. These lines here, I'll talk about in a minute, but this hole is centered at the intersection of this line and this line. And what I had to do was I determined what the distance is between the underside of the decking, which is where this top of the switch machines will go, and the center of the hole here. Okay. Then I determined, I set the depth using the square, and so that I can go anywhere on the layout and draw a straight line. And I know that this line is going to be centered with the center of that hole for the switch machine. The vertical line, these are some of the other tools I used, different squares, straight edges. Underneath, you'll notice these lines come in here. I did those center lines on the outside and the inside in many locations. And the reason was that for the holes I would drill in partway from either end and smaller than the diameter of the finished hole, which I had to insert the red rod. And then I'd clean it out with the a larger drill bit. But this line here runs to the center, if you're thinking it vertically here. So the idea is that even though these are good, you can curve them around, they don't have to be perfectly straight. You want to keep them as straight as possible. And so that being retentive like I am, these lines all run to that center spot on a switch machine. And these are all set the same height. Fast Tracks offers a little wrench that theoretically fits over the yellow tubing, so that when you screw this tubing onto, they call these Z-bends. This is your standard Z-bend down here on the bottom, and this big S Z-bend is the one you use like for a crossover, or if you're going to operate more than one machine with one throw. The things they supplied really didn't fit on these well, so I ended up using these miniature vice clamps. You don't clamp it down hard enough to get this out of, you don't squish it down. You don't need to put it that tight, okay? But what I would do is, because this rod has to thread onto these, I would hold this rod with the one vice grip and then thread the Z-bend in with the other one. I'd thread it in all the way to there and back it out, because the rod has to go through this hole here to screw on to the Z-bends or the S-bends. And it just goes so much easier if you've pre-done that. I can actually get it most of the way down just by screwing it by hand. And towards the very end, I will not have put the sheath in yet. And so I can hold this on the outside of the rod with the one vice grip and use
Right.
that to turn it on, so I get it nice and tight in there, as straight as it goes. And more about some of the other stuff later. Also, this here, you'll notice I used cheap cup hooks that I got from Home Depot. All my bus wirings held in place with just loosely, I can move it around. And I use the suitcase connectors. Everything's a crimp fit. And everything's actually pretty cheap. And so I didn't have to do a lot of soldering underneath the layout. And again, these are designed, they're the right size to go on the switch here. And
Nice.
again, everything is crimp fit. Okay, originally Fast Track's turnouts, control rods came with the clamp you see here at the right. Okay. I actually like them the best. They come with this small screw, which is a whole lot smaller than you see here in the image. And they only came with one. And then this screw here this screws into the joist for the layout. And then this tightens this clamp here. Otherwise, there's a tendency for these red sleeves to work their way inside, and all of a sudden they're just flopping around inside underneath the layout, and that's not good. So it holds in place. Unfortunately, as what often happens, is that when we find something we really like, all of a sudden they're no longer available. So Fast Tracks now offers the ones you see on the left, which are made of cork. They are a nice tight fit. I actually glued mine to the fascia. They indicate you put one on the inside and on the outside of the fascia to prevent the rod from slipping in and out. I just used it on the inside, but it is glued to the fascia. Even though I like these clamps, if you can see this tiny little line here, you can over tighten them, I discovered. In which case, two things can happen. You can get a small crack or break your sleeve, or you can tighten it so tight that the inner rod does not move in the outer sleeve because you've clamped it tight. So those are the two types that they use. Again, this is just showing how I mounted. I did the hole here first with the two vice grips. So I have the this pre-screwed in, then I unscrew it, and I use the screws to mount the knobs to the throw rod. I left all of my sleeves hanging out a 1/4 inch from the front of the layout because this is not the finished fascia.
Oh, right.
And so when I go to install this fascia, basically there's there's another piece that they indicate you glue onto here. However, the way I'm doing is I will unscrew these. I can slide everything in underneath the layout. Okay, I can mount my fascia and it'll be screwed to the floor joist. Then I can drill a small hole coming out centered from the back side to the front, and then drill in from the front side through the fascia, rerun this back in, and screw the back in, and the red here will be just right even with the front of the fascia.
Damn.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you. One of the important things I've also done is I've labeled all my turnouts. So I know, let alone anybody else there that's operating, so that I know what controls what turnout. So I know this one's a crossover. Fortunately, this one in the in position is in towards the layout, because you can catch clothing when the knobs are in the outer position. One of the things that I like about using this system is that you can curve the sleeves. This is a crossover here. You want to keep I try to keep them anyways, as straight as possible between the fascia and the switch machine. But you can curve them. These are different types of holders that they offer. What I have found, to see if that's in the next slide, is that there's a tendency for when you're pushing it in, that the sleeve kind of likes to go in this direction here. So to overcome that, or what I've done, I've got these little, if you can see them, grommets. I got them from Amazon. It was like 1,000 of them for, I probably have 900 and some left. But they fit on the outside of this tube almost perfectly. And then a tip I picked up to get them to be the perfect fit, I picked up from the DCC guy in one of his YouTube videos, is I have, let's see, it's the next slide. Okay, here you go. You might not be able to see it, but there's actually red electrical tape. What I've done is the grommets will be on either side of the machine. I put the electrical tape around so it goes about 1 1/4 turns. Okay, then I'll hold the machine on this side. I'll hold this sleeve here on the one side, and I'll gently push it in here while I'm doing a slightly screwing action. Just, I say slight, okay? And that pulls that on real nice and tight. While I'm holding it here, I do the same thing from the other direction, and it helps prevent the sleeve from sliding back and forth, which in turn helps prevent this from going out and allows the turnouts to throw remarkably reliably.
Nice.
I've not had any problems with either of my two crossovers. This, I can't remember. This again is something I got through Fast Tracks. You can also make your own with, if you want to cut, you could make them yourself out of 1x4 and cut them and drill holes and stuff. But I just use the Fast Tracks things.
DC,
Yes, sir.
can you back up just a couple of slides where, right there. What, you have 2 switch machines that are coupled?
Yeah, this one's coming, the knob controlling that switch machine comes in here from the left here of the side,
Right.
comes in through this holder, through, it's connected to this machine. Now, this is one of those S-bends I was telling you about. Okay. And so this yellow rod screwed in here, there's another yellow rod that's screwed in here that runs through here, comes out here and is screwed in here.
So how many turnout machines are being switched at the same?
Two at
Two?
the same time, yeah.
All right. Are they part of a crossover?
Yeah, it's a crossover.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. I've only done that twice and they're both for a crossover situation. And I could have done it, so I set up 2 separate machines, but that's one of the things I wanted to see if I could do it.
Pretty sharp.
Now, one of the things I tried to do is this piece of metal here. Actually, I did some bending to make sure that it goes centered through the hole here. And the same thing here, I did some bending to make sure it was actually centered through the hole here. When I connected, I screwed I found out the hard way that if you screw onto the Z-bend and then try to run your yellow rod through the hole, you're apt to crimp the rod right there and have to throw the thing out because you've got a damaged rod. So that's why I run the Z-bend in, before I put the yellow rod in, run the yellow rod through the hole in the switch machine, and then I can twist it on. I haven't put on the red rod yet, okay? But then, once that's in position, I then can put on the red rod, okay, our sleeve, I should say. I screw it into here. These supports are not, they're not screwed in yet. So there's a lot of this piece here from here through there is flopping, and there's a lot of excuse me. There's a lot of flexibility in it. So I'm able to then take this S-bend, run it through and turn it, okay? Then I can run this piece of rod through and screw it onto this end of the Z-bend or S-bend. After that's all done, then I mounted these supports and screwed them into the base of the layout. Okay. Here's where you can see where I used some of those straight edges to try to get everything try to get this as much of a straight line as possible. And at least between these two, make it as straight a line as possible.
Right.
It said you can bend these into as sharp as a 6-inch radius curve, which happens to be the size slightly smaller than the number 4 turnouts I built. Okay, so these went in, and all these grommets and everything were put in place after the rod was run. Okay, and then the last thing I did was run in from the fascia this sleeve and through here, and I like to just have a little bit sticking through the hole here.
Right.
Some people, you don't necessarily have to have it run all the way, but I find that it worked better for me. Okay. See what's the next one. Occasionally what I've done is, again, this is one of the grommets. This was basically, I put that grommet on there to hold this retainer in place while the glue I was using dried.
Right.
And it seemed to work pretty good. Same thing, I wrapped it 1 1/4, 1 3/4, 1 1/4 to 1 1/3 maybe times around there, and then ran the grommet on. This is a different type of support you can get. You'll notice it's not an optical illusion. The holes in this side are smaller than the holes on this side. Fast Tracks recommends that you support the sleeve no less than 18 inches. No more than 18 inches apart. And I tried to get it further apart, and I found out that their recommendation is accurate. Again, you see where I drew lines, and I have lines on the base here.
Yeah.
The holes on this side are designed just to support the sleeve. These holes I'll talk about in a minute. One of the things, I really got into a rhythm doing this, and I kind of got into the zone, and I actually zoned out. And the reason this screw head looks a little different than the others is because this support happens to be right underneath where the river is. And so I had screws sticking up through my river. So I had to back them out a number of times and file them down and grind them down. So it turned out I kind of overdid that hole, and I had to put on a larger screw. That was the only place in the layout I had to do that. Fortunately, you can also mount these sideways. Now, the This, the throw rod, the yellow and red sleeves, yellow throw rods come in 36-inch lengths. Some of my runs to my turnouts were longer than that. And so Fast Track offers these connectors.
Hmm.
And basically this sleeve here and this sleeve here, they join right in the middle of that connector. And this
Right.
is where those big holes come in handy. And
Right.
again, this is space, so this is right center where the turnout's gonna be.
Right.
Okay. Next is to put the pieces together. There is a if you remember the Z-bends, if you can imagine a straight piece that's got threads on both ends, so you can
Right.
actually screw the yellow rods together,
Yep.
and then they run it inside these sleeves. However, you still need to connect the sleeves. Here's another instance of that.
Yep.
Unfortunately, in this particular location, because of the distance, it didn't matter if I had the long 36-inch piece here or the 36-inch piece here. They all came up short of where the ideal place would have been if they had met somewhere in there. Then I wouldn't have had to use the sleeve. So that's why I got that
Oh, right.
support there. But
Right.
that stuff happens. Let's see, this is just another thing. As the rod's pulled, the mechanism goes in and throws the throw tie one direction. If you push it in, throws it the other direction. One of the things I went back and did, there's a metal piece from the throw rod I found kind of interferes with the Z-bend. And I've actually gone in many cases and cut this back a little bit, and because sometimes it was interfering with the movement of my mechanisms. And
Wow.
again, you can curve them, and it was a lot of fun. The underside of my layout looks interesting, all the different diagrams and things I've written on there. I plan on going back and before too long, and I'm going to label all these machines as to what they go to.
Right.
The
Good
yellow
idea.
wires go to my frogs. One of the black wires goes to, the one to the positive and one to the negative, and then so we can throw power either direction. I think that's about it.
Wow.
I can't remember other questions.
No, but I'm just, your meticulousness just blows my mind. It's very clean, man. It's very clean.
I thought it looked kind of like an octopus in there, but down the road, I'm going to want to have all these labeled, and that's one of the things I plan to do.
I only did about 8 of these things.
Yeah.
I wish you did yours before I did mine. Mine don't, I mean, mine work, but I didn't measure everything. I love your clips. It worked, but
Okay.
I did
What
not.
type of knobs did you use?
What do you mean the knobs?
Do you have your rod? You used to have rods going through your fascia with these, or you decided not to use them?
No, I haven't gone through the fascia. I did
Okay.
exactly what you did, but I didn't measure it all out, and I didn't do the grommets. I resolved, the bending and all that other stuff. I just made my own holders. I just put more holders in by making them myself.
Right.
Because those things are expensive. I mean, you got to spend a lot of money on Fast Track.
Well, you spend so much and well, depending on how much you spend, some manufacturers can be worked with.
Yeah. Yeah. I
They're
think they're
still not
cool.
cheap.
I'm happy I did the manual instead of, well, The reason why I did the manual, because I do DC and DCC.
Yeah,
And if I'm working DC, electronically, I couldn't do the switches because I'm not, I don't have the controls anymore. And it works great.
well, my layout is about 15 feet 4 inches by about 12 feet 4 or 6 inches, something like that. So since the layout is relatively small in size, basically it's a loop to loop. I have 3 basic scenes. I have the dock scene, I have my town, or it's kind of small city of Vela with the industry in it, and I have a small town, Lagar. I've got some staging in my return loops, but I wanted to have as much, to do things,
Yeah, no, I mean,
because you could
I
set
put
it up all electrical and just switch trains running and everything be thrown electronically. But
now my grandkids love to pull things. They're gonna pull them out and break them, but they love them. I have little guys. Mine's 3 years old and 1 year old. Don't
Yeah.
touch those.
DC.
yes, Charlie.
Many, many amazing feats were shown tonight. I
Oh,
mean, not the
gee,
least,
thank you.
not the least are 45 turnouts. But let me ask, when you were spiking the ties, when you're having the trouble with the shorts,
Yes, sir.
or were you spiking the PC board ties?
No, it was the wooden ties.
Okay.
Nothing through the PC, everything, with fast tracks, they're soldered
Right.
to the PC board ties, but it was to the wooden ties I was spiking. What happens, the spikes went down through the ties, down into the plywood, and something between those sheets of plywood conducts electricity.
Yeah, I'm amazed at that. Along those lines, if you do the fast track turnouts, I mean, onto the PC board ties, I will, I'm in O scale, but I'll use some fine screws to hold the turnouts in place, 2 or 3 screws, one at one end and one at the other end, through the PC board. But you have to be careful because you have to gap the underside of the ties as well, or you could short out on the underside of the tie from one screw to the other. But that wasn't what happened.
Now, what are you screwing into? Well, once you get through the ties, what are you screwing into?
I go right into my track is just directly mounted on plywood.
And
And
you've
so-
not had any problems with shorts.
No.
If
I mean,
there's gonna be something in the plywood, I got mine from Home Depot, if anybody's interested.
well, I did too. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised. Uh, anyway, the radio control airplane people also use these
Yes.
sleeves. And I used those are the ones I used, and they're called Sullivan goldenrods, and they come up to 60-inch lengths.
Really?
Yeah, so that might help you.
Well,
Wait.
if I ever get to do any more of what I eventually plan
Right.
to do.
Right.
I think
But yeah, they're slick. I use that on all my turnouts as well.
That would be, I can see it, especially because with O-scale, you have more distances between things.
Mm.
Oh, I
But-
wish I'd known that.
I didn't have to splice any runs because I only used the fascia controls for turnouts that are in the middle of the peninsula. So they're
Okay.
only about 3 feet away, and if I do one from one side, I do the same thing you're talking about. There's a there's a knob on the other side of the peninsula, so somebody on either side of the peninsula could flip those switches. And then the majority of my other turnouts are just the ground throws because they're so close to the edge of the layout.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I did, Charlie. Yeah, the stuff
Yeah.
comes so close, I just did ground throws.
Did you pull the actuators and standoffs and stuff from Fast Tracks?
I'm sorry. Oh, everything I got was from Fast Tracks, except for the
Okay.
wire and the and those grommets and the tapes. Everything else I got from Fast Tracks.
All the wood pieces also?
All the
No.
wood. They come in laser cut kits. You can buy them singly or in 5 packs.
Were the
Um,
actuators cheaper than the Bluefoot or Blue Points? You know, that
I
you can
did
get?
not even look at the blue points. I tell you.
Okay, I was just wondering, because basically the same.
Yeah, I think they
Exactly.
are. I think they are. I looked at the blue points first, the frogs, and the blue points come put together, and the frogs are pretty easy to put together. DC, you're right. They're kind of
Yeah.
fun to put together too.
Mhm. I just hadn't seen the wood one, so that's why I was asking about it. When you were doing the crossover and you're
Yes.
doing the toggle switch, what's the purpose of the toggle switch?
Okay, so I have power to the frog.
Why
You-
didn't
I-
you use like a frog juicer to make it
Because,
automatic?
because the toggle switch, I got 5 of them less than less than
Okay,
10 bucks.
just
It
cost?
was less than 10 bucks, and then the faceplate was maybe another $1. And I
Okay.
had to drill a hole in it, and
Just wondering, you know, because a dual frog juicer is about 35, and that would have been automatic. Don't have to play with it at all.
yeah. But
So I
again,
just
I
wondered.
have a small layout, and it's, I like to get the involvement. It's the same reason I use Lincoln pin couplers, because I could also use some of the like the Katy narrow gauge couplers
Mhm.
for having more automatic operation, but I kind of like the getting in and doing this stuff.
That's not a problem. You know, I just didn't know if there was a real reason that you had to do it that way. So that's why I was
It
wondering.
was interested and trying to do it as cheap as possible.
Okay, that's fine.
Cheap is very popular, DC.
Yeah, I
Especially
just
when you're
never seen it
retired.
done like that.
Well, and I actually had a whole mess of double pull, double throw switches, but they were with the center off position.
Yeah,
However, they were 20 amp, and I wanted to keep it at 5 amp. So I went with the 5 amp rather than the 20 amp ones. And I went with the auto that returns the auto center off, because let me put it this way. I already had when the first operating session, one of the operators, whose name I will not mention, she
Oh,
went to
good.
remove one of the plug-in controls and just pulled it straight out of the jack. So after I had to put a new connector on that end to my jack. Anyways, I can just see that you get more than one operator and someone leaving it the wrong way and someone shorting out and doesn't know what's going on, and
Control.
so
Got it.
yeah.
Yep. Looks good, man. Jeez, that viaduct looks killer too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to take a ride down, DC. I've been saying I'm gonna, but I got to get down there. It really looks great.
Thank you. Thank you. It's coming along. It's fun. And I really truly, because I mean, we didn't operate trains that much when Tom was here because he was really into working.
Done.
But we when my grandkids were here, you know, and my step grandson was here, they really got into operating the trains, and it was like grandpa's just sitting there watching at the smiles on their faces, or them concentrating on what they're doing or talking to each other. It was kind of cool.
Awesome. Reel them in.
I understand the joy you get from having people operate on your layout. Hopefully we'll be able to see Paul's layout before too long too.
Yeah, I'm on the schedule. I'm putting my presentation together.
Excellent.
You know,
Looking forward
after
to that.
hearing about your grandchildren, my grandchildren are young, so they're really not operating. My layout's not really designed to operate. It's more of a diorama. You know, I'm building a battle.
Yeah.
But I
But
hope
you
I
can
don't
have
regret that.
you have train kids love just seeing the trains going around in circles for a while too.
Well, that's what I do. I just run them around in circles.
That's all right.
I have less room than yours. Mine's probably smaller than yours. How many
Yeah.
linear feet of track you have?
That I don't know.
You gotta measure it, DC. You gotta know these things. You measure that everything's even and everything, and you don't know how many linear feet you have of track. Come on,
Spot on, Paul.
come on.
Ooh,
Next time
burn,
I ask, I expect an answer. I don't know how much I have either.
Well, you're going to be quizzed when you do your presentation. Payback,
At least,
you know.
at least DC knows how many turnouts he has.
Charlie,
I have about 5 extra because I needed to make more of the right-hand ones and I had too many left-hand turns. I did manage in trying to force something to snap one. And I've repaired it and it seems to be working fine. So
Charlie, were you going to say something, or were you going to tell us how many linear feet your layout is?
That's right, size matters. Yeah. Did you use one of the design programs to do your track?
I used the AnyRail program.
All right. Well,
And-
can that give you total length? My rail modeler can. You can just select the whole
I
layout.
think it can. I
And it
think it can. Okay,
yeah.
thank you. I should
right.
go in there.
It does, DC.
It does. It
does
does.
give you-
Okay, so I can go in there, not right at the moment.
As long as your layout equals what you built. I mean,
Well,
mine
there
doesn't-
are
mine
some
doesn't equal what
variations
I designed.
because I found out that what they say a fast track's turnout is, the space allocated for it, is different than I found out in reality, unless my turnout jigs are off. And I got number 5s or something rather than number 4s. Because my turnouts seem to take up more space than indicated on the AnyRail.
Oh,
Go figure.
Did AnyRail have the Fast Tracks library in it?
Yes. And in O-Scale too.
Oh, well, they didn't 13 years ago when I was building my turnouts.
But they're continually updating and you know, once you pay for it, all the updates are free.
Okay.
So as it's kind of like whoever does it, they put in whatever. One thing I did notice, I've over the course of time, I have put together a number of building kits. And I dragged some of them out of boxes, some of them down from display cabinet I had up in my bedroom, just kind of to see where they'd go in the layout. And at one point, when I was designing layout, I figured I had 57 structures I would kits that I would have to sell. Now I have more because when you're looking at things, and even though they seem to fit with the fast tracks, there seems to be adequate space between structures. In reality, that's not the case. And I don't want my layout. See, so like on Tom's layout and your layout, structures are space, there's some space between structures. Things aren't built, right on top of each other compared to, let's say, if you were doing something like George Celios or Jason Jensen did, where their layouts basically trains running through their structures. And they have buildings and buildings and buildings. I found that I needed to allocate more space between structures, so I'm going to be putting on fewer structures than I originally thought I would be putting on to the layout.
And yours is industry based too, right? You have quite a few. I heard you say something about a textile.
Well, the main industry is going to be the port city, because I can ship anything into the port or anything out from the port. In the port dock area, there's going to be a cattle pen area. I'm going to have a couple warehouses. I'm going to eventually build I think it's 45, 48-inch long dock with 2 tracks running out on it. Also, well, originally I was going to put in a like Bernie has, so you can load cars and engines on and off barges. What's that? What are
You're
The
talking about
rail transfer point.
Yeah, transfer. Originally, I was going to have that. I decided to turn that into a coal dock. And what I'm going to be doing is in one of my hidden loops, I've got a siding that I can put on a 10-car coal train. Actually, I could probably put on a 12-car coal train. And I can do from there, I can bring it out and I can be running coal to the docks and then have, it being unloaded at the docks into barges for transshipment or shipment out to the steamboats.
Cool. Good.
Anything can come in and anything can come out.
Lots of options. That's great. Good, man. Any other questions, comments? Anything?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, one question, not about about the coal. Back then, are we talking about everything is shoveled? Or did they come up with any kind of making it a little bit more automatic?
I'm sorry?
On loading up the coal barges, would that have to be done just by hand shoveling?
There's a crane at Alexandria
Oh, okay.
dock at the big coal dock.
And also, you can use chutes, just crude wooden chutes.
They did?
I somewhere I saw a picture.
Ah,
Okay, don't ask me to find it now.
Well-
But I may end up because I like the idea of building a crane too.
well, if
Use
you can't come up with a photo that shows shoots, don't you be doing shoots on your layout, man. We're gonna kill you. It's like you can't do that. Buckets. Yeah, build that crane. There you go.
Oh, the other thing I've been doing is trying to paint details for that engine house. Figures and shelving and hand carts and water kegs and barrels and more tools and more tools and more.
Did you
shelving
move
and
a bed
carts.
down into your training room? Because you had to spend a little time on all this stuff.
I'm sorry?
Did you move a bed down in your training room?
No, actually, no, but I
No?
go down, I'm retired and this is what I do.
I
I
see
go
that.
down there, and I get up in the morning about 5 o'clock or earlier, and I go out for my walk at 6 o'clock. don't go out earlier because I don't want to see too many of the dogs barking in the neighborhood. I come back in, I have something to drink. Instant breakfast.
You can't take
And I
up
go
golf or
downstairs.
skiing. You
As
shouldn't
long
take
as
up
I'm
golf or
busy, I'm not
skiing.
eating. If
Yeah.
I'm doing stuff like when I was repairing this and sitting at the desk here, all of a sudden I'm going, oh, I'm gonna get something to drink and I'm gonna get something to eat. But when I'm down there working with my hands, all of a sudden it's 1 or 2 o'clock and I didn't realize, and Donna will come down and say, are you gonna eat lunch or have you eaten lunch today? Oh, thank you for reminding me. I forgot.
I think Paul invited you to go golfing with him.
I spend way too much, I spend way too much time golfing and skiing. I should spend more time in my training room.
There you go.
That's true. Well, you've come a long way though from what little I've seen of it so far.
Oh my God, your stuff is so much better than mine though.
No, no.
Hey, you're
I
doing
don't have
something.
that detail. I don't have that detail. I don't have that
Okay.
focus on the level of detail.
You never know how it might evolve after you get going. You know, it's like I think any of us, you know, we get to a certain point and we find more details, more things to consider doing. And it's a great the journey is the fun part. You know, when you get to operating, as you guys know, most of you. at least.
And unlike elevating the canal module, don't be afraid of changing things. My track plan in Avella for my Crow Car and Foundry completely changed. I have a structure, it was a 2-story with the tracks going in that I've had for years, and that was actually the original inspiration. And it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. So, so the track plan for that area changed. The fact that some of the turnouts were different lanes, I couldn't pre-cut some of the straight sections. So things
Well, buddy,
change.
yeah, go with it. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you,
Nicely
guys.
done. It's looking great. Gentlemen, you all look fabulous. And next time, I might be doing that piece about a harp stand and maybe Paul will be ready for his, but we'll probably come together in another month from now. You all be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
gentlemen.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.